as we move closer to the EV revolution and companies like Tesla are spearheading the charge to an electric future. At the same time, we've seen the rise of the Chinese copycat tiny EVs that are readily available to order to be delivered directly to your door for a very reasonable amount of money. Of course, quality is going to be a major concern for anyone who will be looking to purchase one of the tiny EVs we'll be looking at in this episode. Safety is another talking point with these EVs we'll be taking a look at in this episode. Last week, a senior editor at the Jalopnik did an unboxing of the Changli, which is a low-cost, tiny yet deceivingly spacious all-electric car that costs around $1,200. In this video, we'll take a look at the 3 rising Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers who are thriving on platforms like Alibaba. Welcome to News Breakdown. If this is the first time you're joining me, please consider hitting the subscribe button and push the bell notification button so that you don't miss a video. If you're listening to the audio version of this episode on whatever podcast platform you're listening on, please hit that subscribe button. So, what is Alibaba? I'm sure you've all heard of Alibaba. Alibaba is an online platform that connects manufacturers and wholesalers in China to individuals and businesses around the world looking to trade or resale. Users buy products for their business and then use or resell them, or sign up to be a supplier looking to use Alibaba as a selling platform. Alibaba is somewhat different from AliExpress, its sister website, as well as other popular e-commerce platforms such as eBay and Amazon. This is because its focus is more on trade between businesses rather than a direct consumer or person-to-person approach. That is, its business typically consists of products being sold in bulk by suppliers at wholesale prices to small or medium-sized businesses worldwide, who then resell them for a profit in domestic markets. In that sense, Alibaba is more like a worldwide drop shipping service. It also functions as a search engine and a bank in some capacity. Clearly, from the evidence, Alibaba is a very highly ambitious company, and they're well on their way to being one of the biggest conglomerates in the world. So in this section of the episode, we'll be taking a look at the Chinese copycat culture. In recent years, the current sitting US president has made comments in public in relation to how the Chinese have managed to steal intellectual property from some of the top institutions around the world. The Chinese are known for their copycat culture from the dawn of the industrialization of their nation. Some people believe Chinese copycat culture, also known as Shanghai culture, is harming the interests of intellectual property owners throughout the world. I'm sure if you are watching this video, you would have seen the replica copies of London and Paris in China. While China lacks innovation, its cheap knockoffs and clones of branded products are cutting the profit margins of the companies that own intellectual property rights and copyright of their innovations. A decade ago, counterfeiting and piracy were issues discussed only in hushed tones in China. Any public acknowledgement of the subject was seen as bringing shame upon local governments and central authorities in Beijing. However, in recent years, the taboo has been lifted. The government now considers intellectual property protection key to the success of the country's homegrown global brands. The acknowledgement from the Chinese government has also trickled down to courtrooms, where Chinese judges have earned a reputation of being pro-patent. This is music to the ears of both foreign and local brands. Between 1996 and 2016, judges heard more than 87,000 copyright-related cases in China. 3,908 websites have been shut down because of copyright infringement in the past 5 years alone. Even with these positive steps highlighted, the practice seems to have continued. China has gone as far as requesting any foreign companies who are looking to set up an operational base in China that they will have to agree to share all their intellectual property with other Chinese firms. Western technology businesses struggling in China are often accused of displaying a self-serving attitude. But the truth of it is that once these businesses are set up in China, in a few years their technology or their IP is copied and made into Chinese versions of the same exact product. In this section of the video, we'll be taking a look at the Chinese EV market. As nations attempt to cut down on carbon footprints, electric vehicles are becoming a larger and larger piece of the equation. For China, this mission is all the more important as it has the dubious distinction of being the world's largest greenhouse gas producer. I'm sure you've seen those smoggy images from Beijing or have heard of the stories of restaurants that charge a fresh air fee. China being the most populous country in the world, it has the highest demand for transportation. This factor, coupled with a mandate for China to cut down on pollution, has made the country turn toward new energy vehicles, which are also known as NEVs. These new energy vehicles predominantly include battery energy vehicles or BEVs, as well as fuel cell electric vehicles, also known as FCEVs, and hybrid electric vehicles, also known as PHEVs. Battery energy vehicles, or simply EVs, now account for over 80% of the new energy vehicles sold in China. China spent about $60 billion between 2009 and 2017 to develop the domestic EV industry in a bid to increase the nation's competitiveness in the automobile industry. This was also aimed to reduce demand for imported oil and improve air quality across China. China's EV market is about 3 or 4 times that of the US and is only going to get bigger. This will propel the Chinese EV makers into the global arena, manufacturing EVs, batteries, and charging infrastructure. The Chinese government has been incentivizing NEV purchases by offering subsidies. The government, which originally planned to phase out the subsidies by 2020, has now extended the NEV subsidies for buying NEVs to 2022, with tax exemptions on purchases for 2 years. The subsidies will be applicable only for passenger cars priced at less than 300,000 yuan, which is about $42,000. The government is also favoring vehicles with swappable batteries. Subsidies will be cut by 20% in 2021, by 30% in 2022. China, which is rationing issuing license plates in big cities to slow down sales in a bid to curb pollution, has exempted NEVs from any of these restrictions, which clearly shows the intention of the Chinese government. This point ties into the next section of this particular episode, which is looking at some of the EVs you can order directly from Alibaba. First on the list is the Changli X1. As pointed out earlier in this episode, you can expect some inspiration was certainly taken from a well-known source on the Changli. Some say the Changli looks like a Renault Twizy. I can't say I can see the similarities. This is a running theme as we go through this list. The Changli Model X1, a 2-person ride that's got some similarities to the Changli, which I mentioned earlier at the top of the episode, appears to be a little bit more refined. Rather than a bench seat, you get a full-size car seat with headrests. The doors also pivot to open from the rear, which is kind of like a suicide door, which gives acres of loading space. Changli claims the X1 has a range of about 60 kilometers or about 40 miles when driving at an average speed of 40 kilometers per hour or 25 miles per hour. That's literally a tenth of the quoted range of a Tesla Model S, but it costs about 90% less, with fully superseded models costing just about $4,000. One issue is that it runs on old school lead acid batteries, which can be dangerously corrosive if they start to leak, but they are extremely cheap to produce and manufacture, so you can see why these kind of EV manufacturers would favor the old technology. Next up on the list is a company called Today Sunshine, and they produce a vehicle called the M2 for a little more money compared to the Changli X1. With this tiny car you can get air conditioning, central locking, parking sensors, LED lights, McPherson front suspension, and some kind of Android-based in-car entertainment system. All of this will be available to you for around $7,000. The M2 also has significantly more range compared to the X1, with 120 kilometers of quoted range. Again, it's based on lead acid batteries. The best bit about this vehicle is it's actually a rear-wheel drive vehicle. Last on the list is a company called BD, and BD produced the BD Cloud model electric truck. As you can see from the images on the screen now, plenty of inspiration was taken from the classic Isetta. Apart from the color scheme, there are no other similarities to the Isetta. For about $7,500, the BD Cloud is longer, wider, has more doors than the other 2 cars we've looked at in this episode. and of course it is electric. So those three EV manufacturers give you a rough idea of what you can expect really from these tiny EV manufacturers, who are clearly, in my own personal opinion, exposing some kind of loophole with the Chinese government to get subsidies for these tiny EV cars. So we'll move on to the next section in this episode, which is safety. Some of you who are watching this video may have ordered some items from Alibaba. Some of you may also have bought electronics from Alibaba. It is safe to say, backed with an endless catalogue of YouTube videos showing and demonstrating how unsafe some of these electronic products sold on Alibaba can be, this brings me to the point of the electric vehicles we've looked at in this episode and how safe these vehicles can be. Battery technology that is being used by the likes of Tesla, Rivian and other EV companies is still relatively expensive. As pointed out when we were looking at the EVs on sale on Alibaba, they are all running on old lead acid batteries, which could be extremely dangerous when they become corrosive. So in conclusion, I would say the copycat culture in China is something that they have built their improving economy on, and it will certainly continue. As Western companies started to introduce certain technologies in the last 20 years, not long after, you saw Chinese companies follow suit. I'm not saying the Chinese are not capable of creating and being innovative. However, it has been well documented over the years that this is a practice that has been taking place for a while. In relation to the cars that we have looked at in this episode, the prices and the battery technology, I would say stay away from any one of these vehicles. And the reason I mentioned the price is because price is usually equal to quality. However, if you do happen to have a spare $2,000 plus and you fancy to have some fun in a little electric vehicle, then you can certainly go for it. Thank you so much for tuning into News Breakdown. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. If you are listening to the audio version on whatever podcast platform you're listening from, please do consider hitting that subscribe button. Thank you so much for tuning in to News Breakdown.